hello everybody. I'm going to talk to you a bit about some of those Scope 3 things that you can do to reduce the Scope 3 emissions. Touch on a couple of things Mark sort of mentioned as well. And yeah, just give you some ideas that you might be able to put into your climate action plan and to help with the decarbonisation of your estate. The plug, always have to do a plug for us. So yeah, we are Let's Go Zero, the national campaign for all schools, colleges and nurseries to be carbon zero by 2030. So we have got, I think, yeah, it blows my mind to think over 8,000 schools are now signed up to the campaign nationally, which is great. And we take those voices, your voices and your action and support and the will that you have to take climate action. We go to Parliament, we go to the DfE, we go to county councils, district councils, big companies, organisations. We work with lots of partners and sort of drive policy change and celebrate the climate action and get support for you to be able to take more climate action because you're doing a phenomenal job already. And but unfortunately, there's still a lot to do. So yeah, you need all the help you can get on top of everything else you need. So if you haven't already, please consider signing up because it really helps us as well. There's the plug, sorry. So I am going to talk about, briefly look at energy, not very much because Mark's covered that already. And then I shall waffle on about a little bit about waste, food, transport and procurement. But then you'll see hopefully how some of these things also merge and have co-benefits for the other areas in your climate action plan. So just things to keep in mind as you're developing that. So the energy stuff, yeah, pretty much a lot of the stuff Mark sort of said, mentioned anyway. I will double down on the optimizing your heating controls. We've seen some fantastic savings from these, both carbon and cost. And in a time when your school budgets are precarious, then they're a really, really good way of making savings there. And oh no, I should have taken the solar for school stuff out. But there are other things for solar as well. And lots of opportunity to get pupils involved, which I think is really good. One thing I will just mention is the Energy Spark stuff, which monitoring your data is really good. And that links to my example that I was going to show you from a school in Great Yarmouth. But just monitoring your system, I think a lot of you may have access to Sigma. And actually, Mark, what would be really good, I think, is some guidance on how people can use Sigma, how business managers and school staff can use Sigma to be able to generate the best reports. Because I've had a look at that with some schools and it's a bit complicated. So some guidance on that would be really good for that.
That might have to be a follow-up session possibly, but
yeah, definitely.
One thing I didn't mention is I'm currently in charge of looking after the Virtus Energy side from the in terms of the contract. So happy to hear about Sigma. I have access myself and I do use it, and I can offer a few hints and tips. But anyway, sorry, I went into.
No, perfect. That's great. Thank you. So yeah. And then just an example from a school I'm working with in Great Yarmouth. So St Nicholas Primary didn't have any control over their heating system at all when the new business manager came in. So working with the diocese, they managed to sort of get control of that using Energy Sparks as well. So the diocese kindly paid for them to have access to that. But I will say it's always worth looking at the Energy Sparks website just because they have lots of free activities that you can do. So you don't have to sign up to it. You can just go on there, browse the activities and take the ideas down. So a sneaky tip there if you don't want to pay. But yeah, it's a really, really good tool. And this pupil dashboard is really good, which is why we sort of promote it a lot, because it's a really useful tool in lots of different ways. But yeah, when the business manager got hold of that and started looking at the data and had access to all those the heating controls and stuff, they saved nearly 10 grand in the first 12 months. So that's a phenomenal saving. So yeah, it is really, really worth. Two things: sign up to us and get on top of your boiler system, even if you have to then pay somebody to come in and do it for you, I think the savings, and as Mark alluded to it as well, the savings will far outstrip the outlay. So yeah, well worth doing. So just in terms of the other areas, so looking at food, and again, this can be a little bit tricky if you've got contracted catering companies that come and do this for you, but a lot of them have a sustainability policy. So they should be looking at ways to reduce their waste and energy consumption. And they'll often say, oh, well, we use local providers. So, you know, have a conversation with them about what that is and see how you can help them and how they can help you. ProVeg, if you've not come across them, a really useful organization, and they will happily check your sort of go through the menu and just see how planet friendly it is, and give little tips on how it can be tweaked. So whether that's even just format changing, so rather than the meat meal being always the first one, it's actually giving parity to the planet friendly options as well. Increasing the number of planet friendly options on your menu, or having a meat-free day, or increasing that number of meat-free days is a really good one, because a lot of emissions are tied up with raising cattle, especially beef. And yeah, so reducing our meat consumption is a really key one. Weighing food waste in the kitchen, so reducing your food waste is really important as well. And I've got a nice case study about that in a moment. And then if you've already got composting or improving your composting, starting that, especially helpful if you've got growing areas as well, so you can use your own compost onto that. And in Suffolk, you have got master composters. When they're not busy, these volunteers can come and help you with that, and they're really good. So yeah, some quick food ones there. In terms of procurement, and a lot of these you'll be doing anyway, but there might just be tweaks you can do, or some hopefully that you might not have considered yet or haven't had the time to consider yet. But developing uniform exchanges, really good one. A lot of schools are starting to move away from second hand, because there's still a sort of a stigma attached to that. So we're getting a lot more pre-loved or new to you, which I quite like. And some schools are setting up things like Minted, where pupils and students run the uniform exchange and raise money for other projects that they want to do in the school. So that's quite a nice way of doing it. Reduce branding on your uniform, another school item. So lots of schools are already doing this and making the logos optional, which is really good. So then those items of clothing can be used for other things, passed on and used elsewhere, which is really good. So yeah, having a look at that. Follow sustainable practices when choosing products. Can be quite a tricky one depending on how your procurement policy is set out, but it's just having sustainability as a consideration. So thinking about ethical products, you know, where they're made, how they're made, what materials they're made from, can they be recycled or reused easily? Yeah, having some kind of procurement or sustainability consideration in your procurement. So whether that's conversations with the trusts or a federation level, with that to kind of build that in. And lots of companies now, so if you use Espo, they have a conscious choice range, so it has got more sustainable items that you can select. And even just things like if you purchase things from Amazon, so actually instead of all the staff ordering their own things independently and getting them delivered individually, coordinating that centrally and just having bulk deliveries and bulk purchases cuts down on packaging, and then the transportation of delivering that and cutting the emissions from that. And I kind of, yeah, that sort of would also include energy efficiency in new equipment. And sometimes it might be a little bit more cost, but actually longer term savings and just reduction in carbon are really beneficial. Not going to happen all the time, but sustainability over cost, because budgets are so tight. But it's just the fact that it's been a consideration in those decisions, I think, is really key. So the food waste focus. So this primary school decided to weigh their waste. So the eco team weighed their food waste every day for a week, displayed it up on the board, did a lot of communications about it, and assemblies and things, and then repeated it a term later, and they made a 40% saving just in those few months they've done that. So that's really good. Also, for me, my biggest takeaway was that the pupils preferred fish fingers to fish cakes. So there's a top tip if you want that one. So that's really nice. And then this primary school, the site manager and the cleaners decided to go to a more sustainable cleaning range. So they buy their chemicals, and well, yes, they are chemicals, but they're less chemicals than they were. But they get larger concentrated or containers with concentrated product in, and then dilute it into spray bottles and reuse them. So they're really happy with the quality. It reduced the plastic use. The chemicals were nasty chemicals were reduced as well, and it was actually cheaper. So it was wins all round for that one. So that's really good there. In terms of waste, so carrying out bin audits. So the simpler recycling regulations came out in March. So just making sure that you're meeting those. And this is another really good project to get pupils involved with, as they quite like looking in bins and seeing what waste has been thrown there, which ones are in the wrong bin. And then you can use that data to then provide education about the importance of reducing, reusing, recycling, and also, what were the other ones? Repair, rethink, and refuse as well. So start to bring some of that thinking in as well. You know, do we need these things? Actually, is there a repair cafe that we could take this broken item to, and if it can get repaired, that kind of thing. So that's really good. And there's some really good programs like Waste Bust and Recycle Now have some really good resources that you can use for that. Linked to that, sort of single-use plastics and reducing that. So plastic-free schools are really good, and plastic clever schools. So just thinking about how you can reduce single-use plastics, and actually catering teams and companies are quite good at helping with this one. And then another one that's sort of growing actually is a really good one, is establishing procedures for sort of reusing school supplies at the end of terms or just in general. So whether that's within a federation or a cohort or a trust, just putting in mechanisms to start swapping equipment that you don't use anymore, or resources. At a national level, we've got like the School Resource Exchange. So you could buy furniture or swap furniture with a school in Hull if you wanted to, if it was cheaper and better than getting it elsewhere. So yes, you can swap, buy and sell stuff on there. So that's really good. I'm flying through these, so I apologize a bit in that. And I can't see any questions, so I'll answer them in a moment, if there are any. In terms of transport, so running active travel campaigns and sort of linking that to an active travel plan. So the big walk and wheel events, doing that annually are really good. I think the council can help you with mode shift stars and sort of create your active travel plan. And then part of that will be sort of building in cycling proficiency lessons to then, it would be good for adults. I don't know if adults can do bike ability, but yeah, just helping the pupils and students gain confidence on their bikes and actually being able to ride on the road and that kind of thing to kind of encourage that more active travel. And then sort of the other end of the scale, you've got install EV charging points. So there's funding for this from the government. Not every site will be, it will work with, but it works really well if you've got a car park that is open to the public, and you can then get them to use it when you're not using it, and you can reap the reward of when they buy it from you. And a bit like the solar panels, there's lots of different finance mechanisms for doing that. But yeah, and always sort of, again, with the solar stuff, it's read that small print and find out exactly what they're offering and what the terms and conditions are. But yeah, if you want to transition to an EV minibus, for example, or staff vehicles, then that's a really good one to do. In terms of just very quickly, the sort of examples here. So this school decided to have a competition for recycling. So they got brightly coloured bins. I never knew they did bins in such amazing colours, but for each, and they represent each house in the school. And then they had a competition to see which house could raise or get the most recycling. And then they were given house points, and there was also spot checks on reusable bottles. So when the pupils were stopped and had a spot check to see if they had a reusable bottle, if they did, they get a house point, and that was all sort of totted up, and there's a nice sort of competition there. So that was really nice. And then active travel, I really like these. So this is Milton Keynes Council worked with their schools to produce these active travel maps. So you can see there, so you've got the red is a 5-minute bubble for walking from school. The blue is 10 minutes, so how far 10 minutes you can walk to school, and it's got things like bus stops on there, the routes of the buses, parking restrictions, park and stride, those kinds of places. And this was shared on social media, the website, and outside on the school gates. So that's a really nice one there. I think that's all my blast through decarbonisation there. And then I think Becca just asked me to highlight some webinars that we have. So the central team put on some webinars, and then we've all been roped in to lead some and host some. So the first few are with my colleagues Paula and Sarah, and they've got Julie Murray, who's the head of food and health and safety from Educatorers, and Martin Skingley from ProVeg. They're talking about school meals and how to reduce waste and costs there. So that's on Tuesday, 2nd of December. We've got my colleagues Jeremy, Luciana, and John. I spelled his name wrong. It's Broderick, but that's on January the 20th, and that's looking at the building changes that make the biggest difference. So one of those spoilers will be the BMS system and optimizing your controls, but that'll be a really good one to go along to as well if you can. And then the last one, which didn't fit nicely onto that other screen because they've done it in a different format, but it's around green skills, so giving support for students to explore green skills and careers, and that's with my colleagues Catherine Ockey and Laura Dempsey, who is from Gen Earth, and that's on the 4th of Feb. So if they sound interesting, then pop them in your diaries. And I think that's all from me. If you want to email me about any of that or climate action plans in general, hopefully you've all got one now, but if you haven't, I can help you with that. If you want me to review a climate action plan, I'm more than happy to do that as well. So you can get in touch through my email address, or on the Let's Go Zero link, you can go through Climate Action Advisor and you can request support there. I think that's it, Becca.
Fab. Thank you so much, Nigel.